Shalom, shalom. My name is Barney de Klerk. I'm a student of the Bible and I love to share what I'm learning. So I'm not a Bible teacher. And so I value your different opinion from my own. Please raise that to me because we learn by debating, by thinking about other prospects and insights from other people as well. This week's parashat or portion of scripture in the Torah is parashat Emor. It means to say or to speak something, and it is say to the priest. It is a fascinating portion. We learn from this Torah portion who the bride of Christ is, who the bride of the Lamb is. It is for every Christian, for every hopeful believer. It is essential reading. And so let's look at it without further ado. In a Pardes reading of this Torah portion, we first get on the Pesat, the simple direct meaning of the text. We learn about the holy priest and their responsibilities to be holy in chapters 21 and 22 of Leviticus. Then we learn about the holy days, the Moedim, in chapter 23, and the holy place and Adonai's holy name in chapter 24. I'm only going to focus on the priest for the sake of time. In the Remes exegesis, we learn that we have to be holy as followers of Adonai because he is holy. Any hope, any chance that you may have to be the bride of the high priest, you have to be holy. In the Drash exegesis, we learn how to determine the times from the Moedim. I'm not going to talk about the Moedim, the appointed times. It's wrong to call them the Jewish feast. It's the Adonai's feast. It's the biblical feast. And they are prophetic in meaning. And it is very sad that the Christian church today are rejecting these 7 feasts. And instead of it, they're celebrating 2 pagan feasts. Sad to say, heartbreaking. I'm sure it's heartbreaking to Adonai Eloheinu as well. And then that extends into the Sot exegesis as well, the meaning of the Moedim. And in Sot we also have the symbolism of the menorah, which I'm not going to touch on today. The general guidelines for holiness that applies to all Israel are refined with additional requirements for the Kohanim, the priests. Remember, last week we spoke about the general requirements for holiness for all Israel, for the entire community of believers in modern terminology. But here we see the refinement that's applicable to priests only. Priests should not be defiled by the dead except the death of close relatives. Priests must not shave their heads or beards after the custom of pagan nations. That's not bold. And they should not cut tattoos in themselves to remember the dead. It is an occult ritual from other nations in honoring of the dead specifically. Priests must not marry prostitutes or divorcees or widows. And the daughter of a priest is not allowed to become a prostitute either. It's with interest that we note in the prophet portion this week, Ezekiel 44, that the commandments for the priest in the new temple will be the same even as the high priest, with linen garments, carefully trimmed hair, not consuming any wine before they enter the inner court, and the same requirements as for the wives, and the same rule about not being defiled with the deceased. the essence of what I want to talk about is the writings about the wife of the high priest. Remember that Yeshua will return as the King of Kings, but also as the high priest, because the two duties will be unified in him. So the description of the bride of Christ, the bride of the Lamb, comes from the wife of the high priest. You can read it for yourself also, Leviticus 21 verse 16. I recommend that highly. What we read in that verse is the high priest will not wear loose hair, and he will wear no torn garments. In the gospel portion we read that Caiaphas, who was not a righteous high priest and not a rightful high priest either, but appointed by the Romans, he tore his garments. He broke this law in the Torah. Then the high priest shall have no contact with the dead. We mentioned that already. And then the high priest's wife has to be a virgin. He's not allowed to marry a widow. He's not allowed to marry a divorcee, and he's not allowed to marry a prostitute. Only a virgin. Spiritually, when it comes to the bride of the Christ, we talk about spiritual virgins as well. Somebody who's not a prostitute of different religions, or some prostitute mixing pagan religion with the holy scriptures as described in the Bible. The high priest's wife, Torah says, must be from his own people, i.e. no foreigner who will corrupt his offspring genetically is suitable as a wife for the high priest of his own people. So when Yeshua comes back, guess who his bride will be? It will be from his own people, Jews who believe in him, not Gentiles. Don't believe the lies told to you by pastors who want to tickle your ears with nice messages. Gentiles are not lost. Gentiles have the opportunity to be, as Paul put it in Romans 11, to be grafted in onto the tree of Abraham, to be adopted into the family tree of Abraham, and then we also have the opportunity to become the bride or part of the body of the bride of Christ, but that is by being adopted into Israel, into the family tree of Abraham. It should be clear that the Gentile church will not be the bride of Christ, as he, Yeshua, our high priest, will not choose a foreign bride. The Torah law forbids that, and he adheres to Torah law. His bride will be from Jewish believers who believe and accept him as their Messiah. Incidentally, Messianic Jews, the Jews who believe that Yeshua is the Messiah, that movement is growing hand over fist. It's snowballing in Israel and in the rest of the world. That is a sure sign of the fullness of time. I'm just scrolling down some writings that I did about the Moedim that I'm not going to talk about for the sake of time. Then let's look at the sacrifices. We spoke about the priest. The holy offerings cannot be eaten by any layman. We read that Leviticus 22 verse 10 to 16 and 24 verse 9. Although the showbread, we know, have been eaten by David when he fled from Shaul, from Saul. And you read that in 1 Samuel 21 verse 1 to 7. So is there a problem that David broke the Torah law by eating the showbreads? Let's explore that a little bit. In 1 Samuel 21 verse 5, it's mentioned that it's the 10th high priest, Ahimelech, who required ritual purity from David, confirming that, and David confirmed that him and his men were pure. Now, the Torah doesn't say ritual purity. The Torah says only a priest shall eat this bread, or somebody who's in the service of Adonai, like a priest. Let's turn the page to the Gospel, Matthew 12, verse 1 to 8. And there's a corresponding account also in Mark 2, chapter 23, verse 23 to 27, regarding keeping the Sabbath. And Yeshua is the one who links it to David's eating of the showbread. I want to point out here that according to Mark, Yeshua referred to the 11th high priest Abiathar, and not to the 10th high priest, the son of Abiathar, the father of Abiathar, Ahimelech. And all the Bible commentators seem to agree that Mark made an error here. Remember that Mark was the scribe of Peter, and he also wrote he was the first one in time to write his gospel. But he wasn't an eyewitness, he was a hearsay witness. So it's likely and acceptable that he got some details wrong, and that Matthew wrote his gospel after Mark's was written, and in his gospel he rectified some of the minor errors that Mark made, but he doesn't mention specifically that Yeshua said who the high priest was. But it is historically, it was Ahimelech, the 10th high priest, and he was the father of Abiathar, the 11th high priest, who Mark referred to. Not a big problem. Yeshua used, what happened in this account is Yeshua and the disciples walked through a field of wheat. They picked some of the ears, rubbed the kernels out and ate it. And the Pharisees were quick to jump on them, saying, you are harvesting on the Sabbath, you're doing something that's not permitted on the Sabbath, you're breaking the law. And in answering them, Yeshua brings David's eating of the showbread into the argument. So why is he doing that? He set the stage for a lesson, and we have to just read and think a little bit deeper than the black of the letters, the literal, in order to understand what he was on about. Yeshua linked the disciples and David's transgression to the priestly duties of the Kohanim in the temple on the Shabbat. I have to explain, in English we only talk about work. Work is, labor is forbidden on the Sabbath. But in Hebrew, the scripture differentiates between avodah work and melacha work. Avodah work is the labor of love, and the priestly duty in the temple is labeled as avodah, labor of love. Yeshua talks about it, you're allowed to do good, you're allowed to do avodah on the Shabbat. It is melacha that is forbidden. Melacha, melech is a king. Melacha is the work you do in your own kingdom. Your profession is your kingdom, your business. And so the work that's forbidden is your melacha work, the work in your own business. And therefore, if you work in your own labor, you're breaking, in your own business, you're breaking the Torah law. But if you do a labor of love, avodah work, it's not breaking the temple. What Yeshua said, and you read that in Mark 2, is that someone greater than the temple is there. And you have to understand that. Yeshua is greater than the temple. Remember when the temple designs were downloaded to Solomon from heaven, or to David actually, who gave it to Solomon from heaven, and also in the tabernacle requirements that was given to Moses, it's a modeled after something in heaven. The something in heaven is someone. It is Yeshua before he came to work. The temple is modeled after him. The temple testifies about him, and a lot of that's in the Sod exegesis of the temple menorah in this week's portion. But we're not going to digress too much into that because it's going to take a lot of time. So what Yeshua said, the priestly duties in the temple is avodah work. It is allowed on Shabbat. Then he says, he's greater than the temple. The disciples are in his employ. They're doing their duties to honor him in serving him who is greater than the temple. Therefore, they are like priests in the work they do. It's permitted on the Sabbath. Even harvesting the kernels of wheat to eat on Shabbat was permitted because they are in his duty, just as the priests are in the employ of the temple. And then the link for David becomes the question. When Yeshua returns, he will reestablish the house of David. He is a descendant of David through his father and his mother. His mother is a descendant both of the line of high priest as well as David. And so Yeshua will reestablish the house of David, the kingdom of David, and therefore we have to ask, what is the role David played? Of course, David established the kingdom after which Yeshua's kingdom will be modeled. David is the forefather of Yeshua in providing the human seed that eventually resulted in Yeshua, in providing the kingdom that will be eventually restored by Yeshua. David was actually in the employ of Yeshua. David was serving Yeshua, and therefore David was like a priest serving in the temple. David was serving Yeshua, and therefore David was allowed to eat the showbread. There's an interesting thing at play here, and when you read the text in the gospel, you should take note. Yeshua has many titles, many crowns, but two titles. Is in the gospel portion we talk about Caiaphas, who asking him, are you the son of God, Ben Elohim? And he says, yes, I am the son of man. Now, playing those two titles, of course, if you are in heaven, if you're a heavenly being and you're looking down on Yeshua on earth, you see, there he is, the son of man, because he was born from mankind. But if you're on earth and you're looking at Yeshua, you see, wow, he's the Son of God, and his title. So Caiaphas saying, are you the Son of God? Caiaphas argues and thinks from a human, earthly perspective. Yeshua's answer, I am the Son of Man, is from the heavenly perspective. You need to understand that. Yeshua, in answering this question about eating of the wheat kernels, harvesting and eating, also links to Hosea 6 verse 6. And in Hosea, that's part of Yeshua's answer. In answering the question, he's actually quoting Hosea 6 verse 6. He says, Adonai requires chesed, which is normally translated as loving kindness. He requires chesed in favor of sebach. Sebach can mean one of two things. It can mean sacrifice on the altar, or it can mean slaughter as an alternative. Sacrifice on the altar is normally referred to in the Bible as korban. And therefore, I favor that Yeshua meant the alternative meaning when he said sabach, that he meant slaughter. He requires chesed, he requires loving kindness instead of punishment, slaughter of the guilty person. We see that confirmed, if you like, in his dealing with the woman who was caught in adultery. He asked, the one who's without sin must cast the first stone. Nobody did. And then he, the one without sin, said to the woman, if nobody else finds you guilty, then I'm also showing chesed to you, loving kindness, forgiveness, and go and sin no more. He didn't tell her to go and sin even more. He said no more sin. And he demonstrated that he prefers chesed over sabach. He prefers loving kindness over punishment and slaughter. In Leviticus, in this portion, Leviticus 23, we get clear guidance regarding Adonai's holy Moedim, the appointed times. These are not holidays, they are holy days, they are appointed times, they have specific dates and prophetic meanings. These appointed times belong to Adonai, not to the Jews. They are his days. They celebrating his holy feast is to commemorate prophetic events, some of them which have happened and some are still to happen in the future. The autumn or the spring festivals, I should say, have been fulfilled during his initial and his first coming, but the autumn festivals must still be fulfilled in his second coming. The appointed times, the Moedim, are not only for the Jews, they are for all followers of Yeshua. Please be aware of that. And I'm just scrolling through some more that I'm not going to talk about for the sake of time. But that brings me to the end of what I want to share about the Torah portion. I want to encourage you, please read Leviticus 22 up to 24 for yourself, or 21 up to 24, and read it carefully. It's not boring. There are fascinating information in between the lines. I trust that Adonai will bless you and keep you, that he will shine his face upon you and be gracious to you, that he will lift his countenance, his provision upon you, and that he will give you shalom. Shalom, shalom.